Hi there, hope you're doing well. We're continuing our walk through the book of First Corinthians and the description of love. And we've been working through these one at a time. And so every video sort of covers one thing that love does. Love acts in certain ways. It doesn't say love is, but it says that love does. And the way that we've tried to break these down is based on the question of if love is one thing, if love for others is one thing, and love for self. Christ said we ought to love others as we love ourselves. And so that picture of love, right? If you love your neighbor just as you love yourself, that picture of love, what does that look like to love the self? And then what does that look like to have that same affection toward another person? Today we come to a very tricky one and sort of a painful one, I think, in many ways. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 5, Paul says that love does not seek its own. I want to ask you a question. How do you know if you can trust somebody? How do you know if someone is trustworthy? And what we would say is that it's a person who has my best interests at heart. It's a person who genuinely cares for me. They're not trying to use me for some kind of personal advantage. They're not telling me false things or having actually false motives for the things that they're saying or doing. When you have a person who truly loves you and who truly cares for you, and their motives are truly for you, what that does is it helps you to trust them. And Paul here is saying that a person who truly loves is trustworthy. They're trustworthy because they're not seeking their own advantage from others. When we love ourselves, what do? Well, we use others for our own good. We essentially look at everyone in the world and we say, well, everyone who exists is actually there as a tool to serve my self-interest. I seek my own in other people. So dangerous in so many different ways, right? So a person who is seeking personal advantage at the expense of others, whether it's physical or spiritual advantage, is a person who's sinfully not loving another person. They're pursuing others for selfish, unrighteous motives. Paul tells us about people like this in Galatians chapter 5. There were the Judaizers who were coming and they were teaching a false gospel to the people in Galatia. And Paul says, yeah, it's true, they're seeking you, and it feels good for other people for them to seek you. But the problem is that they're not seeking you for your benefit, they're seeking you for their benefit. They want to sort of garner people to themselves. They want to bring disciples into under their sphere of influence. They're not actually for you. They're not loving you. One of the most dangerous things in the Christian life is to use other people for our good. We can do this even as pastors, we can do this, or as spiritual leaders. We can start to sort of consider people under our care as something that's ours and not really Christ. We're not actually seeking them for their good so that they can know Christ more deeply. We're seeking them for our good. We're seeking them for our own. We can also do this in relationships, right? Husbands and wives, you know what it's like to be in a situation where you don't trust your spouse's motive. We can do this with our kids. A child-centered family is a family where everything is about the kids, but ultimately it's about the kids because at the end of the day, it's actually about the parents. It's selfishness. Parents want their kids to like them, and because of that selfish, unrighteous motive, because they're seeking their own, they refuse to love their children and honestly care for them in a biblical way. This is such a pervasive cancer. And Paul says, if you actually love other people, you don't seek your own anymore. You stop seeking other people for yourself and you start to seek them for their sake, right? So if we're doing this, what does it look like? Well, there's a lot of things that it looks like. When we're loving this way, we hate personal advantage. We never want to try to take advantage of other people. We would never say that anyone owes us anything. They don't owe us allegiance or anything. They owe all their allegiance to Christ and not to us, right? If we're loving this way and we're not seeking our own, we rejoice in the glory of Christ. We rejoice when we watch other people get physical and spiritual blessings. We're not about ourselves, right? We don't want to pull people or things to ourselves for our own benefit. We want to do that for their benefit and their walk with Christ and for His glory. And also, what you see when you see a person who really loves others and who is not seeking their own, what you see is a person who serves in a position of total disinterestedness. They're not hurt when people don't show up. They're not injured when people speak against them in any way. They're not seeking their own. They're not proud. They're not seeking after their own righteousness, their own benefit. They're seeking for the benefit of the other person. And so what they do is they genuinely love, they care for that person, and they will direct them to Christ, even sometimes at the expense of themselves in really remarkable ways. And it's never done for their own good or their own benefit. It's done for the benefit of the other person. This is what it means to love a person. This is incredibly challenging because all of us carry around inside of us some false motives. But Paul says a heart that truly loves does not seek its own. It seeks the best of the other person. I hope that's challenging for you. It is for me. These are hard things. But this is what it means to truly love people, and that's how we need to think about these things. If we're going to honor Christ, and the power to do this is only found in what? In the love of God for us, right? At the very beginning we talked about that. In this is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us. We can't manufacture love in this way for God or for anybody else. We can't do it. We love. Why? Because God first loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Thanks so much.